myself, and this is heavy. So we're going to see if I can pull it off. I'm just going to put a couple bolts through the mounts for him. Hunter, disregard that. There was like a helicopter just flew and tried to bite me. It was weird. Hold on. Hello there. Welcome back to another episode of Coop's House. This is week 13 of the Squarebody build. So, last week's video, we did not accomplish everything we wanted to accomplish. So, the last couple of weeks, our schedules just have not lined up very well, and they're not going to line up very well for a couple more weeks. So, that being said, we're going to work as we can. We'll only have a couple of days that we actually get a chance to get together. So, last week our plan was to go ahead and get the oil pan gasket changed, get the timing cover on, get the motor mounted. None of it worked out. So during that week we learned a few things, and so we learned that there is a common issue with these 12 valve Cummins, the deadly dowel pin. It's behind the timing cover, so that's something we're going to have to take care of before we put the timing cover on. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and change this oil pan gasket. And then we're going to get this thing put on the frame, and that way it's just easier to work on. It's not hanging on the stand. So it'll be easier to work on. It won't move. So we'll just do that. Then we'll go ahead and mount it to the frame, and then we'll do everything we have to do from there. So yeah, I'm not even going to say that we have any goals for this week because who knows? So I'm going to put an oil pan gasket on. So here we go. Alright, so I used some gray silicone, as you just saw, to put a very, very thin layer around the perimeter of the oil pan. All I did that for was so that I had something to help hold this thing in place while I'm trying to get it lined up on the motor. So I've got it all stuck down. I'm going to put it up from the bottom. I'm just going to put a bolt in each corner just to hold the thing in place. I've got the rest of the bolts sitting in mineral spirits right now, so I'm going to get those cleaned up. And then that way I can go ahead and bolt this thing down as it should be. So, anyway. Alright, so I've got a bolt in all four corners of the oil pan, just finger tight right now. Like I said, I've got the rest of the bolts sitting in mineral spirits right now. So, now I've got to get those all cleaned up, get the rest of the grease off of those with a wire brush, and then we'll rinse those off. Those will be ready to go on and tighten down. So we'll hit those with a wire brush real quick, and then we'll break out the little 3/8 air ratchet, and we'll go ahead and get this thing buttoned up, and we'll be ready to go on the frame. Yes. Alright, so the oil pan is back on. We are missing a couple of bolts, but remember there were a couple that were damaged, things like that. I have a couple laying around that'll probably work, but we just have to figure that out tomorrow. So anyway, now that the oil pan is on, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night tonight. When I get back out here tomorrow, I'm going to go ahead and get the frame motor mounts bolted onto the frame. We're going to get the motor mounts bolted onto the block and hopefully get this thing set down on the frame, bolted in, and then that way we can take care of everything else that we have to take care of. So yeah, anyway, we're going to call it a night tonight, and see you guys back tomorrow. What's going on, guys? So we're back. This is day 2, Sunday afternoon. So I said last night that I was going to get out here today, bolt the motor mounts on the frame, get the motor bolted to the frame so that I can go ahead and knock out a few things that I needed to knock out. So anyway, I've cleaned the bolts up that actually bolt the motor mounts to the frame, cleaned those up with mineral spirits and a wire brush. Didn't video that because, I mean, what's the point in you guys watching me clean bolts over and over and over? It's the same process. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get this thing bolted down and get ready to set the motor down. Here we go. So our frame mounts are on and bolted down. I went ahead and took this one back off because it came in a bare metal and I wanted to go ahead and shoot it with a satin black to help protect it from rust. So anyway, once it's dried, I'll bolt it back on and then we'll be ready to bolt this thing down. But in the meantime, I'm going to take the swap brackets and go ahead and bolt those on the block. I want to put them on with thread locker, but I think I'm gonna hold off on that for now because I don't know which one of these is left and which one's right. So, that being the case, I'm just gonna bolt them on for now, test fit it, and then when it comes down to it, we can jack it up and put thread locker on the bolts and bolt it back down. So, we'll just do it that way, and yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and put these on. So real quick, one thing I want to point out. So these swap mounts, they'll bolt either way. So what we're running into now is, depending on the way that you bolt it, the motor is going to sit either further forward or further backward in the engine bay. So I'm just going to put these on like this for now. We're going to bolt it down, and once we bolt the cab on, then we'll be able to determine if it needs to go forward or if it needs to stay sitting backwards to clear the firewall. So we're just going to bolt it like this for now and then make adjustments later based on what we find when we put the cab on. So anyway, got another one to bolt on, and then we're going to set this thing down. So yes. Alright, so motor mounts are on. I've got the mounts on the block, got the mounts on the frame. So the next thing to do is spin this thing around and set it down on the frame, which may be a lot easier said than done because this is heavy, I'm alone, and I'm kind of a small guy. So, yeah. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is try to spin it around, set it down on the frame. I'm just going to stick a couple bolts through the mounts and just hold them in place. I'm not actually going to bolt it down. So, yeah, I guess we're going to see how this works out. Yeah, there we go. real quick. So we're pretty close. So I had to get these transmission lines out of the way. They're gonna have to be rerun underneath. They wouldn't actually sit down in there as I was trying to actually set the transmission or the engine in there. So I'm gonna have to rerun those. But anyway, so this is offset just a little bit from the mount hole. But if you come around to the opposite side, yeah, you guys see where I spilled oil last week when I was doing this? Heck yeah. So over here, we're almost perfect. So I'm gonna keep messing with this a little bit and try to get it to set down, but I'm not sure. I may have to swap the mounts to the opposite side. That might be how I actually get everything to fit. So we're gonna try this, but not sure if it's gonna work. If it doesn't, I'm gonna swap sides on the mounts and then go from there. So let's continue on. So the Cummins is sitting on the frame. I don't know if I'm happy with the fit or not. So I don't have the bolts in the motor mounts yet. It's just kind of sitting down on the mounts. But the harmonic balancer isn't completely center. So I did notice a difference in the mounts that go on the block. So one of them, and I'll show you here in just a second, has a little bit more of an offset than the other one. So I swapped those, but now I'm thinking I may need to jack it back up and swap them one more time. So yeah, probably gonna do that because then I feel like that's what's gonna center it up and it'll actually fit like it's supposed to. So anyway, yeah. So after all that trouble, I'm fixing to jack it up again, swap those mounts again, and hold it back down. But anyway, you see it. It's on the frame for the first time, and yeah. Anyway, we've made it this far, at least. So anyway, we'll show you what I meant on these mounts, and then we'll swap those out, and I'm calling it a night. So I'm gonna show you this real quick. I want to show you the two for comparison real quick. So you guys see this right here. This is the top of the mount. This is the one that I put on the passenger side. When I did that, it actually moved the motor back a couple of inches, which I think is actually going to create a problem with the cab. So that being said, we need all the clearance on the firewall that we can get. But so you see that one, you see how long the top is right there, and you see this one. I'm going to come over here. It's probably, let me get where you can see it. So there's the top of it right there. It's probably an inch shorter on this side. And what I'm thinking is the reason for that is if you look at the top of the mount right here, it sits flush on the block. But when you come around to the other side, this one
actually has some ears that stick it off. So I'm thinking if I swap this back over to the other side, it's going to even everything out, and it's going to move the motor back forward away from the firewall. I really don't want to cut the firewall if I can help it, but anyway, yeah. So I think I'm going to jack it up and swap these mounts back around.
So motor is on the frame. Motor mounts are in place like they're supposed to be. I've got a couple of bolts in it. So flipping those mounts back around moves the motor back forward, and it centered everything left to right. So now everything's in like it should be. So yeah, I got to get a couple longer bolts to be able to put through there so I can actually bolt this thing down. But those bolts will hold it in place for now. When I get back, all I'll have to do is jack it up a little bit, take a little bit of pressure off, slide those bolts in, put a couple of nuts on them. We're done with that. I'm going to have to modify the cross member for the transmission. So I've seen a lot of videos where guys were swapping these engines into these trucks and they were building their own cross member. Well, what I found is that the thickness of the cross member, or the distance between the two ends of it, are the same as the inside of the frame rail on the C30. So what I can do is I can actually shorten the transmission cross member very slightly, re-drill some holes, and I'm actually going to be able to use the Cummins cross member with the transmission so I don't have to build one. So when I come back, that's what I'm going to be doing, be bolting this thing in place. It'll be permanently bolted down. Hunter may be here in the next day or two to work on some powder coat, but I go back to work tomorrow, so I won't be back until Wednesday. So if Hunter doesn't come work on it, this is as far as we're getting till I get back. But when I get back, we're going to get on that transmission cross member and work on getting this thing buttoned up. So anyway, I'm calling it a night, guys. I'll see you in a day or two. And yeah, motor's on the frame, big stuff. What's up, guys? So I'm back from work today, and so the other night we got the motor mounted.
I'm here.
It's Cody.
Hi.
It's been a minute.
Yeah. Lots of minutes.
So Cody's here to help me today. So, all right. So like I said, I got the motor mounted the other night. So I said the next thing we were going to do was fix this deadly dowel pin. So we're going to fix that, get that put together, and then we're going back with the timing cover on this thing. And then the very next thing we're going to do is go ahead and get this transmission cross member modified so we can get everything bolted in place like it should be. And then this evening, I have some help showing up, and we're going to be setting the cab down on the frame and getting ready to create or fix some of the clearance issues with the motor and the cab. So anyway, that being said, let's get to work. All right, guys, so I want to elaborate on what I'm talking about this deadly dowel pin that we've read about and been told about. So there is a pin right here. I don't know if you can see it. Somewhere right in there. Really small. So apparently over time that actually wears down and will back out and then fall out, get caught up in these gears, and just wreck the world. And we don't want that. So apparently the fix for this is to make a small little bracket which bolts here and goes over the top of this that keeps that from backing out. So we're just going to take a small piece of sheet metal, we're going to drill a hole so we can bolt it here, and we're going to put it over the top of this dowel pin, bolt it there, and then forget it. So yeah, we're going to cut a little piece of metal. All right, so we got our dowel pin fix. So the next thing I have to do is put this timing cover on, and then we're going to go ahead and modify the transmission cross member to get it put in so that the engine actually sits like it's going to sit. Because one issue that you have with this swap is the harmonic balancer won't clear this front cross member. So I need to get the engine where it's going to sit so that way I can mark out and notch this front cross member to clear the harmonic balancer. So anyway, that being said, let's go ahead and get this timing cover put on. Alright, so timing cover's on, so the next thing we need to do is go ahead and modify this cross member. So this one right here, this is the original Chevy cross member. So the Chevy transmission only bolted with 1 bolt, whereas on the Dodge mounts with 2 bolts. So rather than try to do anything to this one, I'm just going to leave this one just like it is, and that way we can bolt it directly to the transmission. So this is 33 inches overall, fits inside the frame. This one is 36 and a half. So I'm going to have to take 1 3/4 inches off both sides because I do want to keep this centered. So 1 3/4 inches off both sides, get this portion where it'll fit inside the frame, and then these brackets on the bottom, there's one goes on each side. I'm just going to slide these inward, modify those how I need to modify those, and get those where those will actually mount inside the frame as well. So that being said, we're going to mark this thing out and get it on the chop saw and get it cut down. Alright, so we used the chop saw, we shortened the cross member, the Dodge cross member. So what we're doing now, we actually have to put the bottom supports on. So what I've figured out is going to be the easiest thing. We went ahead and we took, I've got one off the Chevy. These two came off of the Chevrolet cross member, so the Chevrolet cross member actually fits over the little divot portion of the Dodge cross member. So we're going to put it in there, we're going to drill a couple of holes to where it needs to mount, and that is going to be our driver's side mount. The other side, it's a little bit wider, so it's not going to fit the Chevrolet portion of the cross member. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Dodge cross member portion, and we're just going to move it back, drill a couple new holes, and bolt it down where it needs to be able to make the length right. So I'm going to mark this, drill a couple of new holes, put some bolts in, and we're going to test fit this thing, and if it fits, which we hope it does, we're going to go ahead and mark our new mount holes on the frame, drill those, and then we're going to clean up this cross member, put some paint on it, and then put it under the transmission so that it is actually sitting where it's going to sit, and yeah, we'll have cross member. So. tightened and bolted in. We got the holes drilled in the frame to mount it. So we decided to go ahead and take those bottom side brackets out because, as you saw in the previous clip, I was able to actually pick up the tail end of this transmission, so there's really not that much weight back here. And this crossmember is pretty rigid. I mean, it's some serious material. So, yeah, I think we're just going to try it out without the bottom brackets. If we need them later, we can add them. So, anyway, that being said, it sits in, transmission's on its own weight, nothing supporting it, so everything sits great. But we're going to go ahead and pull this thing back out, get it cleaned up, shoot a coat of paint on it, and bolt it back in. That way we can go ahead and modify this front cross member and be done with that part. So, that being said, let's keep going. Okay guys, so it was a little bit of a struggle, but we finally have the cab back on the frame. Couldn't have done it with all the help that we had. My brother showed up, a couple other friends. So yeah, 5 of us lifted this whole cab, put it on a trailer, moved it up, and then had to run it all the way down the truck frame to be able to set it down and get the mounting holes to line up. So a little bit of a struggle, but we have made some serious progress, and it's starting to actually look like the truck's going back together. So super exciting stuff. So gonna get this thing rolled back in the shop and getting ready to call it a night. Okay guys, so it's been a big week this week. We got the Cummins motor mounted on the frame. We got the cab moved over and set on the frame. So big stuff happened this week. We're going back together finally. So next thing we're gonna have to do, we're gonna have to find out, I'm gonna have to get over there and look, just make sure that everything clears in the transmission tunnel and things like that, because that is a common issue with these swaps. I'm not sure if this cab was 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. So the 4-wheel drive tends to clear the transmission, 2-wheel drive does not. So got a few things to look at, but we got a lot done. It's been a good week, so we appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you know when we post. Share our video with your friends, and we hope to see you on the next episode. Appreciate you guys. Have a good weekend.